Hello, everybody, and a really warm welcome to another courageous conversation where we are celebrating the voices, the courage, and the wisdom of women from all around the world. My name is Pollyanna, and I look after community engagement and strategy for TreeSisters, and I also head up TreeSisters in Australia. And I'm really thrilled today to be having a courageous conversation with one of our TreeSisters team members, Lauriane, who is the Tree Program Manager for TreeSisters. So this is going to be a really tree-focused conversation, which I'm excited about. So welcome, Lauriane.
Thank you, Pollyanna.
I'm just going to share with everybody a little about Lauriane before we get started. So Lauriane came to TreeSisters with expertise in geographic information systems and remote sensing as powerful tools to develop new insights and recommendations for better governance of the forests. She's conducted several research projects, such as assessing forest degradation and analysing the protection status of the world's forests. She has over 10 years' experience working for international think tanks and non-profit organisations, as well as consulting. She joined TreeSisters feeling that solving the environmental challenges would need more than sound studies and smart mechanisms. It also needs a more connected, intuitive, and creative approach for leading the changes it takes to protect the last intact forests, reinstate a more sustainable forest cover, and serve our planet. So, Lauriane, we always start with this same question. Why are you a TreeSister? So I'd love to hear your response.
About 6 years ago, when I was living in Belgium, and I was pregnant at that time, I went to a peri-urban forest called La Forêt de Soigne. So it's like Forest of Soigne. It's outside the city of Brussels. So it's a lovely man-made forest. So it's a forest that was planted, I think, about less than 100 years ago, and it's managed. So I used to sit down and on weekends there, have a picnic time, so eat for lunch. And I was wondering why I was feeling sad, because I wasn't sad. I was pregnant. I wasn't sad. And I wasn't sad before going to that forest. And why would I be sad in that forest? And I started realizing that what was sad was the state of this forest. The fact that it was without animals, basically. The fact that it was man-made, that there were no vibrant life in that forest. So I was escaping the city for being in a life, like in a place with an abundant life, but I wasn't in there, and that was making me very, very sad. And actually, I could feel the sadness of that forest. I don't know, it sounds weird, but I don't know if it's about anything about communication or anything like that, but I could feel that the forest was basically sad. And I was pregnant. I was thinking, maybe that's a message for me. Maybe I need to change my career path. Yes, I've been working in the environmental field, in well-known like NGOs, even an international organization, but I was feeling that that my life wasn't very fulfilled by what I was doing, even if it was, like professionally interesting, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I was thinking that the kind of environment I want my son to live in is not an all man-made environment, that it requires some naturalness space that needs to be left out, and that perhaps we can improve these peri-urban forests and make them more natural than they are, Yeah, that's that's the message I got. And then
so you followed that message?
Yes, actually, I mean, I didn't really try to follow it because I think at that time I didn't think it was a message. I thought, okay, that's weird, and okay, I realized that we live in the world that I don't want for my son, but I have that job, I cannot do anything. But then someone, a friend of mine, talked to me about TreeSisters, and I was like, okay, that exists. And then I thought, okay, perhaps I can shift to what I've always wanted deep inside me, shift to more genuine actions, more connected actions, because I used to work for the environment, but from my desk, doing maps, satellite imagery analysis. Okay, it was for a good purpose because it was for assessing the state of the forest worldwide, like quantifying the rate of deforestation. But I didn't feel it was enough connected as well, as much. It was enough connected. And also I always had that sensation that it was the work that I was doing was really missing that genuine and connected relationship with nature, because I was so remote with technology that it was preventing me for doing that. So so I decided to quit my job. Another job that I quit, and to join TreeSisters, because I thought that's exactly what I need to get more connected with trees, with nature, and do a more genuine type of work. Yeah, that's how.
It's kind of fascinating that the man-made forest, in a way, prompted you to working, you know, in a more holistic way with trees. That I find that fascinating, actually. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about, you know, what is the difference, because I'm sure there are people who live in a urban or peri-urban environment where there are created forests around them, not realizing that there is a difference between a man-made forest and a natural forest. And I'd love you to share a little more about what is the difference between those two.
Yeah, when we live in France or in the UK, or maybe not in Australia because you still have wilderness areas, but we can think that a forest is natural, but it's not. Actually, so I'm French, but I'm coming from a tropical island called Réunion, and it's covered by 30%, I think, yeah, 30% of, maybe 40% of pristine forest that has never been touched. Yeah. There were basically no human living on my island about 400 years ago. So did
you grow up on Réunion?
Partially.
Right.
Yeah. So I've always known what a natural forest is. I've never been to the Amazon, but I had my little Amazon on my island. And so how does that look like? It looks like a multi-layer ecosystem with with like tall trees that forms the canopy, and understory trees and other plants such as mosses, grass, ferns. You would have, because we are in a tropical environment, setting, we would have like epiphyte plants. These are plants that grow on top of the trunks of the trees, for example. You have lots of life in the soil, like a high rate of decomposition because it's humid, because the soil is super rich, and it has never been reworked, worked in a way So there is an abundance of life everywhere you look at. It's that lots of species, animals, wildlife, noises, sounds, colors, everything. That's not what I was seeing in the beautiful, by the way, peri-urban forest in Brussels. But it was very different. It's very different. So a natural forest is a forest that is either formed by that was formed by nature naturally, or was regenerated naturally by us. So it has no, not by, but so that means that there is no slash little human intervention. The forest in Brussels, so you have foresters who do a great job. They come and they maintain the fire breaks. They control invasive species, and they would sometimes apply herbicides. So me, we can walk and lay our
put the picnic rug down.
Yeah, exactly. So so that's what a natural forest is. And then you have to make the distinction with all growth forests. So it's like the high end of natural forest. It's that natural forest that has been natural for a very, very long time. We can call them ancient forests, and they are the most natural forest habitats, and they can be used as reference for like restoration goal, or a reference when you want to assess the state of the forest. The condition of the forest,
like the health of the forest.
Yeah, the health of the forest.
I was reading in Robin Wall Kimmerer's book Braiding Sweetgrass. She was talking about medicinal plants that are found in the forest, and she was saying that, you know, in a natural forest, that's where all the medicinal plants grow, and that when you go to created forests, they tend to lack the plants that are used as medicines by many indigenous people. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, of course, because when it's man-made, foresters will plant trees, but they can, but they plant sometimes trees that are needed, or I mean, it's hard to reproduce the same process as the forest unless you really use the right practices to do so. But the traditional forestry practices kind of prevent us from doing that, but it's changing.
So what are those processes, those right processes for recreating natural forest?
So I want to say that it's right or wrong, but maybe we can talk about the reforestation, like what reforestation can be about. And I can give you like a range, I mean 3 examples, and then you can make your own judgment of what is right or wrong.
Yeah.
So
let's do that.
So at TreeSisters, we use the word reforestation for, it's like a word we use for everything that's about restocking a forest with trees or planting trees on land. So it's like like a canopy word. But actually you will have different look and feel when you do reforestation, depending on the reforestation goal and also the practices, the method you use. So for example, one goal you may have would be to recreate a natural forest. That's called forest restoration. And so the actions consist to reinstate the natural processes, ecological processes that occur in the natural forest. So example will be, so you don't plant basically, but you will, for example, recreate what the wind does to a forest. So so the wind the wind throw gaps that are created by the wind are totally normal processes, sometimes fires as well. And you will, so the conservationists or the foresters will try to reinstate the decomposition process that exists through the microfauna, how to say that? The microbial community that exists in the soil. So they will try to enhance the soil, do this kind of things, and also not destroy the soil structure and
so
fauna.
are they waiting for the forest to naturally pop up new saplings? They're not actually planting any trees in that instance.
Yeah, it's like they are assisting the forest to regenerate, and they try to imitate the process of the forest, and they follow the natural the process that the natural succession process of a forest. So yeah, they really do like the forest, they just speed up forest regeneration. I mean the natural processes, but they imitate it, they reinstate them. So that's one hand. Then so another example could be, for example, you would reforest in order to sustain local people and communities' livelihoods. That's very legitimate. So you will, for example, so that's called, for example, you will create a plantation forest. I call it a plantation forest because it's planted. You plant trees, and you can plant just one species of tree, and trees will be the same age if the seeds or the tree seedlings were outplanted or seeded at the exact same time. Or you can plant a variety of species, maybe three, four, five, a bit like the forest in France or in the UK. But you end up with not a very highly structured forest and not a very high composition, biodiversity, diversity of tree species. Another example is is planting trees on farmlands. So it's called regreening farmlands with trees. And so that's actually the smart integration of trees on farmlands. They could be intercropped with crops, or they could be planted along fields, edges, or it could be just food trees, how do we call it? So the goal is to have people use the terms forest garden or food garden. And people would use the word agroforestry, which is the discipline and the science. So all the design and the strategy that needs to be used to design and maintain an agroforestry system. And you can be using a permaculture vision or practices. That is that vision or view that makes you think the practices based on environmental observation. So yeah,
so it's kind of like,
what permaculture is.
Even once you start drilling down, even within agroforestry, there are differences. So you can have regenerative agroforestry and then more conventional agroforestry. And I think what you're saying with the reforestation is that, and I'm curious because maybe I'm wrong, but is assisted natural regeneration, is that more regenerative for soils, biodiversity, ecosystem than, for example, planted forests, or are they the same?
To me, it's yeah, I would favor assisted natural generations for several reasons. Because of low cost, because you know, if a tree grows in a place, that's because it's the best condition for that tree.
Right.
If you seed, if you transplant, if you outplant tree seedlings, you might have not a high survival rate because you may not have found the perfect condition for that tree. Also, I think there are some studies that have proven that plantation forests, are less resistant to winds and storms. I mean, there are many examples like the forest in France, in the southwest of France, that was completely destroyed after a big storm. So yeah, assisted natural generation is certainly more natural, and I think it's the best it's the best practice for having a forest preserved in perpetuity.
Yeah, and obviously, I guess nature knows what she's doing. So, you know, I think it would be hard for humans with our brains to know in that same way what goes where without an incredible level of understanding the subtlety of the landscape. But also, the assisted natural generation, I suppose it has less. It's not so easily measurable, is it? You know, like you don't see that same impact where if somebody's managing a piece of land and they go plant 200 trees in it, you can see 200 little saplings. And with the assisted natural regeneration, you're not necessarily going to have that immediate impact.
Yeah,
is that right?
It's not immediate, but you can still monitor. You monitor the growth of the forest. You monitor the diversity of the species on your land. So yeah, it means that there needs to be long-term plans, capacity, resources for monitoring such a project. Yeah, and I just wanted to say also, because I forgot to say that, assisted natural generation is really low cost because you take advantage of the resources of nature, just like you said. So I think it's logical. It's a good choice, a logical choice. The thing is, it cannot be employed. It cannot be used, utilized all the time. It depends. Sometimes you have to plant because there are no more seed stocks. Because, for example, if the land has been farmed for 100 years, it's going to be very, very hard for the forest to grow back fast. So you will have to either do some enrichment planting because you're missing some species, obviously.
And is that because the seed bank in the soil has gone because of the period of time that it's been farmed?
Yeah, because the land has the type of use and management of the land has destroyed the soil. And also because for a long period of time, there were no wildlife. So no like small mammals that would poop on the land. Sorry for the word, but that's the only word I know in English. And yeah, all the birds. I mean, there are no birds that can. I mean, if there are no like forest nearby, it's going to be very hard for the forest to restart by itself. Yeah. So you will have to plant. So there are no bad and good. It depends on the goal. It depends on the desired goal. It depends on who you're working with. It depends on yeah, the land, the starting condition. It depends on the landscape, what's around. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of factors. And how do you decide then which form of reforestation to undertake in any given area?
TreeSisters doesn't decide because we fund reforestation projects, but our partner reforestation NGOs, so they take the decision. So initially they would try the two methods and see what results they get. They will put in the balance the cost, all the different factors. They will like do a field survey of the site to see what seeds are available, what species are around, what can be just how do you say that? Like you can actually dig out some of the wildings that are like small trees next to a mother tree and move them to the sites you want to reforest. So they will have to do a field survey, and then they will make a decision based on that.
Right. So I'd love to come back to something you said while you were talking about the different forms of regeneration, and you said that planting trees to help local human communities is a legitimate form of reforestation. And I think that there's sometimes can be a misconception in the world of conservation, I guess, that human beings, maybe shouldn't be a part of any kind of, that a restoration project or a reforestation project doesn't have anything to do with people and shouldn't be about, propping up people's lives but that's a really important part of what we do at Tree Sisters in our projects. And I'm interested in your thoughts about the value of projects that are supporting, that are reforestation projects that are supporting human beings as well as trees and wildlife communities.
So at Tree Sisters, we fund, so most of the projects that we fund are community based, and there's a reason for that that I'm going to explain later. And I personally, and I think I need to do more research about it, but I think that we cannot separate human from nature, and we cannot separate them from the forest and say these are no-go zones and you have to leave to some extent, of course, because you might need to have to reserve some core zones around springs or but so I think there are several reasons for not separating them and reconciling both, because I think there is a nexus, like a nexus between. I mean that there's a link that between human poverty and deforestation and forest that must not be ignored. Why you shouldn't disconnect human from the forest? It's for, first of all, it's for ethical reason, because you cannot say to people you leave, because it's their environment, it's not ours, it's not the environment of me living in France. Also, when there are private investors who come to a developing country and say, this is my area and it's going to be a no-go zone, it's just for wildlife, it causes problems of sovereignty because these people were there. So for ethical reason, it cannot be done. And another ethical reason that I'm thinking of is, when Claire talks about the illusion of separation, that, why we are why we are harming our environment like this, because we have been disconnected from nature, from her. So I really think that for that, maintaining that link, even if it's not perfect, does really make sense. Otherwise, we will just destroy the planet totally, completely. So
can you say a little bit more about how poverty drives deforestation?
So yeah, one of the reasons why it's important to maintain this link, I mean, why it's important not to put the people out of the equation, is because 30 to, yeah, I think approximately 30 to 50% of deforestation is caused by local subsistence agriculture. It's not caused by logging companies or by large-scale agriculture. It's caused by the people who need to survive. So if you move them away, how are you going to do if they are starving? And that's just not possible.
So are they using the forest for their fuel wood, for when you talk about...
So most of the people in the world are rural people, so they actually they rely on the forest. That means that they highly depend on it, because they need to collect wood for cooking their food, for heating their house, sometimes in the higher mountains, and also they need they convert them into agriculture land. And most of the time, these populations don't own land. They don't have any land security. And what they do is that they cut down, and they don't replace the trees that they cut down. They do slash and burn, but in an uncontrolled manner, and that's just because they don't have any titles to land, any rights or anything like that. So if you don't own a land, you're not gonna maintaining correctly, because you have other problems to solve, such as moving to another area and make an income. So you're always looking for alternatives and options. If you have a land for you, you will certainly invest in it and make sure that it's well maintained and your activity can be sustained.
And so how do the planting projects solve that problem of the deforestation that's driven by poverty?
So our reforestation projects are, they are planting or assisting trees to regenerate, but it's not only about that. We tend to choose projects that have a holistic or a comprehensive approach. So they will also solve in some ways poverty issues within the communities. So, for example, the projects of Eden Reforestation projects, they will employ people to plant, but it's not so. If you employ them, they get a salary. If they plant, they restore their land. But it's not only about that, because at some point the land will be all reforested, and the funding will stop. So it requires a lot of community awareness that, hey, the fish are coming back, but they will realize it. But it's always good to really to have these conversations with them, so they really understand that it's very, they know it's valuable. They know more than us, because they still have the ties that they have, that I don't have in front of my computer. But they certainly need to realize that it's a wealthy, because they have that, they can live a wealthy life. Yeah, and some of the project will also plant a certain amount of agroforestry trees. So these food trees that they can use for making an income, so they can sell it. And also some of the wood can be, so it can be cut down. I'm not talking about cutting the whole tree down, but I'm talking about like, how do you call that? When you just
Coppicing.
cut some of
It's coppicing.
Coppicing, or like cutting some of the branches that you can use for your stove.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say is that why you cannot disconnect these local people from their forest is because they still have a strong connection, because they are most of the time their faith, their religion, their traditional ceremonies, their their medicine is based on the forest. So then you cut them from these resources. These are non-timber products, but they are resources for them. And also you're going to destroy a culture that has a lot of wisdom about the forest and a lot of knowledge that we don't have.
Yeah, that's so true. You're making me think of, we have a tree here called, well, the word that the settlers gave it was bunya pine, and it's very sacred to the local indigenous people. And I was having a conversation with one of the local indigenous elders, and she was speaking about how their language is so tied to the landscape and the trees and everything that when people came in and changed the names of everything, they actually cut them off from, you know, what was sacred to them. And she told me the local cubby name for these bunya pines is bunyi, and I'm probably not saying it right, but to be able to name the tree in the way that it has been known for thousands and thousands of years is a really powerful thing. And I really appreciate what you're saying about how much of the culture of local people in many of the places that we plant in, that we fund the planting in, is tied to their landscape and their relationship with individual trees or individual animals. So yeah, I think that's really important what you're saying.
Yeah, that's very good example. And that makes me think of the indigenous people of the Amazon. So people might think that the Amazon, people think of the Amazon as a pristine area, but about 1/3 of the Amazon has actually been gardened by the ancient civilizations. They've been farming them, not doing intensive farming, but they've been doing that. So that means that it's possible to reconcile livelihoods of people and the forest. And actually, interestingly, they have these ancient communities or civilizations have enhanced the Amazon forest. So the soil, yes, enhanced it. So there are more tree species diversity in the land that was historically managed by them than on lands that wasn't historically managed by them. And
wow.
And the soil is super rich. It's called terra dark. It's like dark soil, terra preta. So this soil is so rich that some people are interested to buy just the soil from the Amazon. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah. So, and also they've been a growing body of evidence that land managed by indigenous and some local communities is good for reforestation and for the forest. So for example, yeah.
No, you go.
For example, in the Amazon, I think that it's about 2 to 6 times. So so where people have where indigenous people in the Amazon have land rights, their land is 2 to 3 times more reforested than in the other parts of the Amazon. So that tells you how good stewards they are, because they own the land and because they still have a high connection and they have a livelihood that is connected with the forest.
Yeah. So I think what's coming through really strongly to me is that I guess different to the sort of the background that I was raised in, conservation was generally about excluding human beings and creating areas that were for wildlife and forests and, you know, for things that are not human beings. And what I'm hearing you say is that we are inseparable from the forests, and that, you know, indigenous people have known this forever. It's the same in Australia, and have cared for country for a really long time. And there are settler accounts in Australia that demonstrate that the whole continent was essentially managed by Aboriginal people. And so I think it's really important to have that holistic view where we understand that human beings are more than capable of having custodianship of forests in ways that are actually really beneficial to the forest and to everything else that lives there.
Yeah, I think it's important to think that way, so we don't keep separating us from the forest, but we need to keep thinking on the good practices, the good governance system that needs to be put in place, so we really manage our forest the right way, because it depends. I mean, the forest can be in good hands and in bad hands.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of the time, and this has been such a fascinating conversation. I always learn so much whenever you open your mouth. I learn so much. I'm wondering if we always invite Courageous Conversation guests to leave our viewers with a last thought or a last message for people. And we've been campaigning for Grow Your Own Forest for the last month, encouraging everybody around the world to fund trees through TreeSisters so that we can make giving back to nature as natural as it currently is to take. And so I would love to hear any message that you would like to close with, whether it's about reforestation, whether it's about humans' relationship with trees, whether it's something else that you would like to share that matters to you around the trees, just as a way of finishing.
Yeah. I think that we can link the holiday season and the trees, and I think that if I can leave a message, it's to to that it's possible to that you can take the opportunity or the possibility for, I mean, to grow your own forest, to fund the planting of trees that will be done by reforestation NGOs in the developing country that really needs it. You can take that opportunity, especially during the holidays, because that's going to change your heart, that's going to change your brain, that's going to change your existence and the existence of your kids.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Lauriane, for being with us. This is the last Courageous Conversation of the year, and I will be back next year with a bevy of amazing women to talk to, and so keep posted for that. And if you've enjoyed this and you would love to give back for the trees and help restore our planet, please do go to treesisters.org/give. We also have some very beautiful e-cards available on our website if you're looking for last-minute gifts. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for supporting us and for being a Tree Sister. And we will see you in the new year.